Well, hello, folks. We're right on the hour, so I'd like to kick off our webinar today. First of all, let me say thank you very much for joining us. Don't know what time it is where you are. For me, it's 7 p.m. I'm committing this webinar live from my home in Amsterdam, and just a delight to be here to present for you. So thank you so much for taking an hour of your time. And if you're also watching the recording, of course, also appreciate that. My name is Drew Millen. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at VertiGIS, so I'm looking after the product management and R&D organization responsible for VertiGIS Studio and some other product lines, but VertiGIS Studio is the subject of our webinar today. And just to give you a quick sense of the agenda that we have planned, in case you're unacquainted, I'll give you a brief orientation to VertiGIS, our business, and sort of how we fit in the overall geospatial ecosystem. Then we're going to provide an overview of VertiGIS Studio before we do a deep dive on a couple of the products that we wanted to focus on today. Those are access control and analytics. And then, as I mentioned already, we'll save some time for your questions and answers. So a little bit about VertiGIS. Today, we're just over 600 employees located around the globe, and you'll see that in just a moment where we're located. Serving approximately 5,500 customers. Many of those customers are direct customers that license software and services from VertiGIS, and many of those are served by a partner channel. So as you can see, we've got 85 named partners in our ecosystem, and those are sometimes resellers that provide VertiGIS technology in different geographies, or implementation partners and technology partners alike. And one of our most strategic partnerships is that with Esri. That's a technology partnership where much of our product portfolio at VertiGIS is built to extend and enhance ArcGIS. And that is, of course, the subject of today's presentation as well. We're, as I mentioned, located around the globe in 9 different countries, 23 offices, all of the white text there. If you add it all up, that's 23 different offices where you can find VertiGIS staff. And that's a result of bringing together a number of businesses over the last 8 or 9 years. We've, with our ownership, been acquiring businesses and growing organically, but also inorganically through mergers and acquisitions. And our footprint is the result of having a strong footprint in these geographies and these cities for many, many years. And over those years, we've also collected quite a database of customers. Because we like maps, we actually made one of our customer database, and I'll just show you what this looks like in a web browser. So this is, our customer database, and I just bring this up to show you kind of the concentration of where our customers are located. And also, if you're joining us today, maybe you can relate to some of these locations. And that's our sort of global customer database, but we can also focus in on those customers that are licensed for VertiGIS Studio technology. And you can see quite a few hundred here in North America. I suspect, given the time zone today, that's where most of you are joining us from. I mentioned before our partnership with Esri. Just a few more points on that. This is a strategic partnership for us. I believe also for Esri, this is rather strategic. We're one of their largest partners in the Esri partner ecosystem, and we've been in partnership for over 20 years across the globe. We participate in a number of their partnership advisory councils, both on the technology side and on the business side, and we regularly align with executive leadership all the way up to their CEO and President, Jack Dangermond, on technology strategy, on business strategy, and just making sure that the technology that we're jointly providing mutually benefits our customers rather than sort of stepping on each other's toes. So we make sure that our roadmaps are aligned and our technology fits nicely together. The way I like to think about the geospatial ecosystem is kind of like a layer cake. So if we start at the bottom of this diagram, our customers are typically acquiring or somehow recording spatial data and then storing that into a geodatabase. And they're using GIS infrastructure from ArcGIS to manage that data, but also publish that data out to their organization. At VertiGIS, our focus is not on spatial data or even on the GIS infrastructure, but rather on the applications that leverage the investment you've made and that sit on top of that GIS infrastructure. So more concretely, we consume the published map services and feature services and other types of services that come out of ArcGIS and turn those into really useful applications for your organization. And then we also provide services on top of that layer that typically configure those applications and integrate them with your existing business systems. So that's the very brief overview of VertiGIS. VertiGIS Studio today, the focus of our webinar. One way to describe VertiGIS Studio is by starting with ArcGIS. At the center of our diagram, we see ArcGIS, and this is a little icon. Here we're representing either ArcGIS Enterprise or ArcGIS Online in your organization. What VertiGIS Studio can help you do is build and manage very sophisticated, tailored web or mobile applications for your organization. So there's configuration frameworks that deliver rich functionality out of the box that give you tools and functionality that your users might be looking for. But beyond that, many customers look at VertiGIS Studio because of additional capabilities that we provide that provide a sort of an enterprise layer of capability to those applications, whether that's fine-grained security or control over the data that you're exposing in apps, integration with third-party systems, production-ready reports, or guided interactions that step your users through applications or through experiences in those applications. Any one of those capabilities would be a good reason to look at VertiGIS Studio, but beyond that, we've invested tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of hours in sophisticated capabilities that extend this even further. So whether it's APIs for developers, creating applications that work both online or offline in the field, production-ready print outputs, linking to external data sources on the fly, providing applications in multiple languages, providing index search over your attribute data, charts and dashboards, and much, much more. Now, the way that we package all of this up is in a collection of products. So the green bars in this diagram are the products that come in the VertiGIS Studio product portfolio. So rather than thinking about it as one product, it's actually a suite or a collection of products that are grouped into application frameworks. This is where we help you configure web, mobile, or desktop experiences. Capabilities, which are actually portable, they can be used inside of those application frameworks. But importantly, they can also be used inside of Esri application frameworks like Experience Builder, and then enterprise support. And as you might recall from our agenda today, that's what we're going to focus on, the enterprise support capabilities in the VertiGIS Studio product portfolio. This diagram is going to help me illustrate how VertiGIS Studio fits with your existing investment in ArcGIS. So in the center of our diagram, we see ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise. Let's say it's interchangeable for this purpose. And you have creators that you're using to author web maps, web scenes, and other content that you're storing inside of your portal. With VertiGIS Studio, we can use those application frameworks and the creators, the same creators that you use to sign into your ArcGIS Enterprise portal, for example, can be used to author a web application experience or a mobile application experience, which ultimately gets stored as a configuration item that sits inside of your portal. And then we can use the same creators to sign into the design experiences for those capabilities. So if I'm authoring a print template or a workflow or a report, I sign into a design tool in the web browser using my creator user type, and it stores that as a VertiGIS item right back inside your portal. That means it participates in sharing and security the same way that your web maps do. We then reference all of this content inside those apps that we've configured. So in this case, a web map could configure an application that consumes one or more web maps and web scenes and one or more VertiGIS items from your portal. Then we share those applications to your end users. Inside your organization, those would be viewers, contributors, maybe mobile workers, the different user types. They can also be public users, and many of our customers are publishing public-facing applications with VertiGIS Studio. Access control is a layer that sits between the user and these applications to control access to the application screens, to the content that's being displayed through those applications and the underlying data. And VertiGIS Studio Analytics sits on top of all of this to give you deep insights into the way that your GIS infrastructure and your applications are being used by your end users. So this is in one picture how ArcGIS and VertiGIS Studio fit nicely together in one ecosystem. I think you'll see this a little bit more in our first demonstration. So I'm going to jump right ahead into our first demo today. And this is going to show you how we create applications in VertiGIS Studio Web, extend those with workflow, author and print out reports, and also quickly touch on how we build mobile applications. For starters, let's look at the landing page for the SaaS environment. This is the VertiGIS Studio landing page where you can sign in to any one of the different products. And I've already signed in here to the VertiGIS Studio Web Designer. I've already also taken a few steps to author this application. On the left-hand side, we have a live preview. And on the right-hand side, we have a hierarchy showing us how this application is organized so that we can change the layout like I just did there. We can also change the branding of the application. In this case, let's change the theme color to a nice bright green. And we can link to services like our printing service or our geocoding service. So all of the configuration settings for our application are here in one place. Here we're going to configure the map of the application. So we can browse the content inside of our ArcGIS portal and find maps that we've authored or maps that are authored by other users in our organization. But what this makes this really interesting is when we start to configure the functionality. So you can see the toolbar that we've configured here, and we're just going to extend that toolbar using the pre-built list of commands that come out of the box. There's dozens and dozens of these commands to choose from, so I'm just searching for one in particular called the edit markup command. Now with that edit markup command, what we're going to demonstrate is how I can create markup on the map and then edit it. Now remember, we're still in the design tool here, just using a live preview. But now that I've got my edit markup command, I can test how it works before I publish this application to my end users. So I've extended my toolbar with a built-in command, and that's sort of the basic way to extend these types of applications. But there is also a much more sophisticated way to handle your custom logic that might belong to your organization. And that's with a technology called workflow. Here you can see all of these workflows that I've authored or workflows that have been shared with me by other users in my organization. And I can also create a new workflow. In this case, I'm going to find a workflow that I've already authored that says, show my location. One of the things that I might want to do to make this a little bit more user-friendly is rename that workflow and give it a nice icon. In this case, I'm opening up the icon library that belongs to VertiGIS Studio, and I can find the icon suitable for this workflow. Now, I'm going to open up the workflow design in our workflow design tool. This is also a web-based authoring tool. And you can see here that this workflow grabs the current position. It does a geocode to find out where it is, and it creates a point symbol. And then it tells the user where that location is on the map along with the geocoded address. I'm going to extend this workflow dynamically at design time to prompt the user for their name. And then we're going to also create a text symbol and drop that on the map beside the point at the user's location. So you can see here we're using the output value from our text box, and then the suffix was here. And we're going to drape that on the map right beside the point symbol. So now that I've saved this updated workflow, I can run it to test it in my application. And you can see that that prompt for my name, the form is here, and I type in my name and it automatically shows that location on the map. So that's a simple example of a workflow, but hopefully you get the feeling of the configurability and extensibility that that tool can provide for custom experiences. Now I'd like to showcase some of the printing capability that comes with VertiGIS Studio. In the simplest case, we can print the map at a given extent and scale level with everything that we see. So the yellow box is kind of a what you see is what you get type of experience. But we can further configure our printing with different output templates and indeed multi-page map books. In this case, we want to create a map book that contains multiple pages where each one represents a different aspect of the map that we want to print. So let's change the print type to a line, and the user can now digitize a line whereby they would like to see all of the map outputs. And depending on the scale that we've selected, it will automatically determine how many pages are required in this map book to produce this output. So I'm just going to digitize a line in a little C shape here. And then it's calculated that 4 pages are going to be required. And you can see a preview of the orientation of those pages at this scale level that I've selected. I can also customize any of the fields that I might want to supply to my print template. For example, in this case, a title and some notes, and decide if I want to include additional context like the overview map. While this output is generating, let's jump over to the print design tool to see how this was authored. So this again is a web application where end users can author an entire layout or multiple pages of layout with overview maps, legends, the main map, scale bars, and all of the other attribution that you would expect in a print output. And it's just a drag and drop control. So really easy to use web-based design tool. Again, we're saving those outputs inside of our portal and then just referencing them here. Here's the PDF output of our previous print job. We see a nice overview page, and then each page is displayed. And in its overview map, you can see the highlighted page that we are looking at. Of course, my title and notes are also included in this PDF output. For the last part of this demo, we're just going to touch on VertiGIS Studio Mobile. This is a mobile app builder that works a lot like the web designer. In this case, the preview is not as accurate because, of course, we're deploying this to a native mobile device. But in this case, I'm going to extend my mobile app with the same workflow we used before. So remember that workflow that showed my location. Here we have a very, very simple mobile app that I've configured with 2 buttons, the refresh app button, and an I want to menu, which runs any number of commands. I've extended the I want to menu with the workflow that I just created. Now I can launch the app that I just authored, and you can see my 2 buttons. There's a map with, it automatically zooms to my location on mobile devices, but I've also built a workflow to do that. So when I open my I want to menu, I can run my show my location workflow. And this is that same workflow we authored, this time running in a simulated iOS device. But it, of course, could be deployed to an Android device or a Windows device. VertiGIS Studio Mobile is very compatible with all of those platforms. So we have a web-based design tool for authoring very sophisticated web applications, integrated with workflows for extending those applications, a very sophisticated mobile design tool for creating customized mobile apps that can work online and offline. And that's just touching on some of the apps in this overall product portfolio. We looked at web, workflow, printing, and mobile in this demo. But as I mentioned, we're going to be doing a deep dive on 2 products in particular throughout this presentation. And the first one is on VertiGIS Studio Access Control. What Access Control does is allows you to provide fine-grained permissions on all of the services that you're publishing through your applications and through your ArcGIS server. This can be a significant time savings since a lot of our target customers and organizations without access control end up publishing services more than once just because they want to hide certain fields or hide certain layers to certain different types of users. And that's a huge administrative overhead. We can protect sensitive information, manage permissions with ease through a web-based design tool, filter your ArcGIS services at a very, very fine grain to specific users or specific groups, and ultimately provide targeted content to the right users at the right time within the right context. So without saying too much more, I think it'll all become crystal clear through another product demonstration where we'll spend a bit of time in the administration tool and a bit of time in the ArcGIS.com map viewer where you'll see the results of providing access control on a particular map. So here's our setup. On the top side of our screen, we see the Access Control Design Tool, a web browser experience that I've just logged into as a VertiGIS admin, so an admin user type here. And on the bottom, we see an ArcGIS.com map viewer signed in with a user named ArcGIS. We're just going to use this user throughout our demonstration. We've discovered an ArcGIS server that is configured with access control, and we can browse all of the services, the GP services, the locate services, the map services, and start securing these things. And in this case, I want to secure the assets service. This is the same one that you see our web map using below. And in particular, we're going to focus on this work orders layer. You can see the work orders have a status symbol showing high, medium, and low work orders. Let's start by just filtering this layer outright. So I've chosen the ArcGIS demo user, and I'm going to deny access to that user. When I save and refresh, The map is still going to load, but we're going to prompt the end user that we're unable to load the work orders layer because this user no longer has permissions to that layer. So already that's an advantage of using access control. I'm going to make this visible for that user again and refresh. So it's going to reappear. And this time start to control some of the field settings on this particular layer. So I can see the layer, but I want to be a little bit more specific about what this user can do. So if I look at the attribution of one of these features, I can see a couple of different fields like the request ID and the category. These are the two fields that I'm going to manipulate. So just keep those in mind. I'll go to the field setting for this layer and they're all listed. And there's the request ID field. And I'm just going to make this denied for this particular user. By the way, if I ever want to know what permissions are applied to any user, I can just click on their name and it will highlight across the board where there are permissions for that user. The other setting is I'm going to make the field category visible, but not editable. So we can actually control whether or not the user can see an attribute, but also whether or not they can edit a particular attribute of a layer. So let's see how this works inside the ArcGIS.com map viewer once I've applied these settings. First, if we scroll down to where we should see request ID, you notice that it's disappearing. And then if we edit the attributes, we can notice the category field is not editable. Meanwhile, I can edit the other fields. That's honoring the visible property, but not editable setting that I've applied. Beyond field level permissions, we can also get into record level permissions. So again, for the same user, I'm now going to set a where clause or a condition to control exactly which records in this layer the user should be able to see. In this case, I'll set the priority to high. That means this user is only going to be able to see work orders where the priority equals high. We can also dynamically populate these with arcade expressions. So if I wanted the logged in username or something like that to be part of my filter expression, I can do that. So let's go ahead and notice that this particular work order is indeed priority high. And you can see that the orange and yellow work orders are filtered out from my map appropriately. In the last example, we're going to control the geometric filter. This means that I can set an area or an extent where an end user should have access to features or not. And in this case, I can manipulate a geometry manually, such as in this case, I can drag a polygon on the map, or I can also paste in a JSON expression. Maybe it's the boundary of a feature that you have, a jurisdictions layer or a districts layer or something like that. After applying my geometry filter, we've completely narrowed the scope of what this user can do. They're only allowed to see high priority work orders in a geometric extent. They're only able to view fields that I've selected and edit particular fields that I've selected, and so on. If at once I want to remove all of those settings or do bulk operations, I can do that like I just have on this layers and tables section here, and we are back to normal with this end user. Now that's just a simple example with one user, but of course we can apply this to groups, multiple layers, groups of layers, and so on and so forth. So you can really fine tune the way that your end users are accessing the data through ArcGIS. Hopefully this quick demo gave you a good impression. The next focus for today is on VertiGIS Studio Analytics. Now this is a tool about understanding your end user productivity with the applications you've published. Understanding their productivity does have to do with the performance of your system. So that means how well your servers are performing, how well your map services are performing, the availability of all of those assets. But also it has to do with the way that end users are experiencing your apps. So it tells us who's signing in, how long their sessions are, what they're doing inside of those applications, what tools they're using. So we really gain deep insights into your user behavior to make sure that we're tuning our experiences for maximum productivity. Again, I think this is best illustrated through a demonstration. So let's go ahead and take a look at VertiGIS Studio Analytics. To start, we open on a screen where we can see all of the assets we're monitoring. This includes the servers, ArcGIS servers, portals, ArcGIS Online, and applications. And in the overview, we can sort of at a glance see any warnings or issues we might want to take care of. Let's start in the servers section. We're looking at a chart where we can see all of the memory usage for all of our servers. I might be more interested in the operating system version that's being used. So I can group the chart by operating system version. And then I can stack it so I can still see the memory usage on each one of those physical servers. I can filter out services that I'm not interested in or highlight the ones I'm interested in, and also add dynamic expressions. For example, I only want to see servers where the memory is greater than 60% usage. All of the filters that I'm controlling here apply to every single chart in VertiGIS Studio Analytics. So just keep in mind that this type of slicing and dicing can be done on any of the charts that we're going to look at today. Now, back at our most popular server, let's go ahead and look at trends. Trends become interesting at looking at data over time. Here in a 24-hour period, we can start to see down to the hour or even down to the minute usage statistics. For example, all of the errors and warnings. And for each of these charts, we also have a tabular view so that we can sort the data and export the data if we really need to drill in. You might, for example, be interested in all the warnings that occurred in the last 24 hours. So we can open up a table and export that to Excel for further analysis, for example. Those timelines are controlled with this date selector. So we can look at last week, the last 7 days, the last month, or pick a particular month, for example, in this case, January of 2026. And if we look back at our server trends, we can then see an entire calendar month view and then start to organize the data in the way that makes the most sense for us. So now we can see our most popular or our busiest servers, pardon me, by either CPU or by memory. And if we want to do some comparative analysis, we might want to organize this data into a pie chart to see which are our busiest servers across our whole system. But servers is just the infrastructure. What about what's running on it, the applications? For that, we dive into our ArcGIS server. Here, we're looking at a particular ArcGIS server, and we can see all of the status information, like what services are published, our availability monitors and alarms, or any other monitors and alarms, what web adapters are attached to it, and all of the services that are published from this ArcGIS server instance are listed there for detailed review as well. We should also jump to the trend view for this ArcGIS server so that we can start to see the way it's being used. And here we can see all of the operations, again, for the month of January 2026. But in this case, for the demo, we'll switch back to a historic timeline in June 2023, where there's just some more interesting data to look at. Here we can see usage activity across the whole month and look up popular services so we can see which servers and services on this ArcGIS server are indeed the most popular or the most in use across a month. We're sorting by number of operations, but we also might want to understand processing time. So here we can see, for example, a GP service is responsible for the most processing time on that ArcGIS server, even though it might not be the most popular. Continuing on, we want to organize this data by service so that we can see our most popular service. And here I can see with over 6,500 operations, our map server called Midstream in the energy folder is our most popular service. So now when we drill into a particular service, we can actually see the individual operations that are occurring on this server, from export operations to query operations, and again, review those by processing time or by total number of requests. Within a service, we can also see which layers are the most popular or require the most processing time. If we have a long lag when we're drawing our map, we might want to drill in at this level to understand which layers might be responsible for that performance delay. When we look at errors, we want to drill into exactly what kind of errors that are being produced, when they're occurring, understand if users experienced those errors, and maybe get some user feedback on what the experience was in the application. When we're looking at performance, we can look at layer draw time. So here we can see, for example, if the processing time to draw a layer has to do with rendering the labels or the halos around the labels, for example. All good tips for tuning our services for performance. We can switch now to an ArcGIS Enterprise portal. Here again, we've got a number of alarms that we're tracking, including one that tracks the number of users that have been assigned. We can also see our user types, both by total available and the number assigned, and the content that is being created by the end users in our organization. Here we're looking at the different types of content that we have. You can see workflows are the most abundant, but in terms of number of views, layers are the most popular content in our ArcGIS Enterprise portal. We can also add different fields to group these items by. So if I want to see, for example, what content is public or private, I can add how the access is controlled. And if that's the most important thing, group it by access. And now we can see that the most abundant content in my organization is indeed private content. When we look at trend data for ArcGIS Enterprise, we can see how users are interacting with the items in our organization on what dates and what times. And again, use all of those date and time filters to drill into periods of particular interest. ArcGIS Online has a lot of the same types of reports and statistics that you just saw from ArcGIS Enterprise Portal, with some distinct advantages. Especially as we start to understand the trends with ArcGIS Online, we can start to look at credit consumption over time and those services that are causing the most credit consumption. Here's a credit usage chart that shows us that feature storage is responsible for the most credit consumption. But if we filter that out, we see the next offender is geocoding. We might want to group that by username to learn exactly which users in my organization are responsible for those geocoding requests, again, on the timeline that I'm particularly interested in. And now I can drill specifically into one geocode operation that burned quite a few credits on June 16th. Finally, let's look at some of the web application statistics. This is a really great way to see what your users are doing and what's popular and what's working in the applications you've deployed. Here we can see our most popular apps. So all of the number of sessions are grouped here, showing which applications had the most sessions. We also might want to understand session duration. So instead of just the pure number of sessions, where are users actually spending a lot of time inside my applications? Because that's a different metric informing me how I might want to optimize the delivery of those apps. Now I want to group these I could group by user to understand which users are signing in, but let's go and look at the browser and the operating system so I can understand what kind of OS and browser combination is being used. It's hard to see on a day-by-day basis, but if I switch this into a pie chart, we'll see instantly that Chrome on Windows is our most popular browser. So I should tune my application for that. But I should also observe that some of my users are still accessing my app from mobile devices. We can also drill into which kind of app tools are being used. So here on each day, what the most popular tools on the toolbar are, how many times they've been invoked, and again, the performance of those tools. With VertiGIS Studio components specifically, we might want to filter this down to learn exactly what kind of reports and what kind of workflows are being executed and what the experience with those are. So here you can see all of the Studio components being used by this application, but let's filter this and find out which reports are being run. So if I say the type contains report and apply that, we now see in this application the reports that are being run, how many number of uses that report incurred, and the average duration to generate that report for my end user experiences. You can also see the search expressions that users are typing in. This might be a clue to create automated search expressions or queries that are just a button click away for your end users if they're commonly used expressions. Errors in applications is another good way to see what your end user experience is. So we learn, did they see a warning? Did they see an error? And can we correlate that with the same time period with anything that might have been happening on the server, like memory being maximized or CPU being maximized on a particular server? So this is just a very, very fast tour, of course, of the hundreds and hundreds of reports that you get with VertiGIS Studio Analytics. And it's also very configurable to your organization's needs. So you can report on exactly what's important to you, but also set off alarms and actions that run when criteria are met and thresholds are met that you're not satisfied with, making sure that your end users have an optimum experience. Now, I know a lot of you might be wondering, this looks a lot like ArcGIS Monitor. Can you maybe compare a little bit how this tool performs or the purpose of this tool in the context of Esri's ArcGIS Monitor? And it's true that there's overlap between these two capabilities, but I would say the biggest difference is the focus. With VertiGIS Studio Analytics, we are designing the application to make sure that we're optimizing the end user experience with the applications you're giving them. ArcGIS Monitor is more of a performance monitoring tool that looks at your system performance, but it doesn't really look at the way that end users are engaging with your system, and that's the primary focus of VertiGIS Studio Analytics. Overall, to summarize why VertiGIS customers choose VertiGIS Studio, I think it has a lot to do with total cost of ownership. We can look at the way that applications are built, and our customers are building tools faster than they would with custom coding approaches or configurable app experiences. They're building more sophisticated applications. But I think the most important point is that over a long period of time, our customers are saving cost and energy by maintaining multiple applications with sophisticated capabilities for their enterprise over many ArcGIS upgrades and over, in many cases, several years or even decades. I know I went really fast today, and that was kind of the point, to give you a very fast and quick tour of all of the capabilities of VertiGIS Studio. We've only touched on, of course, a couple of these, but there's plenty of resources to learn more. We have a publicly available community that you can sign into and browse our knowledge base. Our documentation is also all publicly available. So if you want to get into the specifics of the way that our products work, you can go to our documentation center there. For developers, there's APIs and SDKs for extending the technology. So we have great tools and features out of the box, but a lot of our customers definitely want to extend this or integrate it with their own existing business systems. And we have a growing library of videos that show you tech tips on how to configure and work with different capabilities in Studio to really enrich those applications. Do take a minute to check out our YouTube channel for that. And if I have a call to action for you today, it would be to learn more through one of our professional consultants. So with this QR code, you can schedule a private demonstration, indicate exactly what your organization's needs are, and make sure that the demonstration is tailor fit for exactly how we might be able to solve a business problem that you have. Before I close, I want to give a shout out because we promoted this webinar ourselves, but also with the help of our trusted global partner community. And one partner in particular is an implementation partner called Resource Data. They do excellent implementation work. They know VertiGIS Studio inside and out. Please do reach out to them if you're looking for implementation support for configuring, building applications with VertiGIS Studio, solving specific, maybe challenging business problems. So thanks, Resource Data, for reaching out to your network to helping get this information to as many people as possible. And with that, I'm going to close the sort of formal presentation component of our webinar today. Thank you so much again for attending this far, and I will open up our Q&A to see what type of questions we might be having here. So Chris, thank you. The QR code seems to be down. Thanks for that flag. We will certainly share the URL to get a customized demo after with all of the attendees of this webinar. But the easy way to do it as well is just to go to vertigis.com and then navigate to VertiGIS Studio. So directly from our website, you can sign up there. Is it possible to use VertiGIS Studio Web on mobile devices such as an iPad instead of the mobile app? Yes, indeed. Thanks for the question. VertiGIS Studio Web is great at configuring web experiences for both web browsers that run in a desktop environment, but also on iPads or even iPhones. And there's different layout options that you can choose to tailor your experience so that it is purpose-built for those devices. I don't believe it makes sense to squish a desktop GIS into a tablet form or a phone form. So we give you the tools to create layouts that are appropriate for the devices that you're working with or that your end users are working with. Somebody asked if it's possible to demonstrate some of the accessibility features of VertiGIS Studio. I don't have a demonstration prepared for that today, but it's a good question. Maybe it was a call out from one of those first slides, the wheel slide as I call it, where you see all of the capabilities of VertiGIS Studio. One of them is accessibility. And this means that all of the applications that you configure and build are automatically accessible for end users with disabilities. So we can allow them to navigate with keyboard controls or with speech-to-text functionality, and we comply with the highest standard of guidelines from WCAG for those standards. Is there access to video training materials on VertiGIS, or are there specialized trainings? Great question. We actually have a very trusted training partner who offers the complete course for VertiGIS Studio via their services. They're called Teach Me GIS, and they provide excellent training on all of the VertiGIS Studio products that you saw today. As well, we get extremely positive reviews from all of the customers of ours that have taken their training. So I highly recommend looking up Teach Me GIS for your VertiGIS Studio training. And there was a question about, I think, our customer database. Why nothing in Spain? Yep, we're not everywhere. We're definitely located in a lot of locations around the globe. Let's just say why nothing in Spain yet. Good. Just looking for any additional questions. And here's a feature suggestion. Can you please add the functionality to display the attribute table for a feature layer in VertiGIS Web? I have good news for you. The answer is yes, we can, and yes, we will, and it is coming up soon. I'm not sure if it's the next release or the one right after that, but I know that development is nearing completion, so you won't have to wait very long for that functionality. Well, good. It appears to me that no more questions are coming in. Of course, if you have them, please don't hesitate to contact us. Again, through vertigis.com, you can sign up for a demo. Thank you so much for your attention today. We hope you've enjoyed the content. Have a good rest of your day and good rest of your week. Goodbye for now.